What's up, my beautiful people? D'Lo here from Raincoat Nail Armors. Welcome back to the channel. Today's assignment is for week 3's FTE217, and today's date is February 23rd, 2025. Right? So, I want to be clear, there is no live ammunition in my workspace for this video. Right? For this week's assignment, I have to choose 3 AR components and answer the next 5 questions, following 5 questions. Right? So, the 3 AR components that I've chosen for this assignment will be the buffer that goes inside of the buffer tube with the spring. That's 1. 2 will be the A2 birdcage flash hider muzzle device. 3 will be the entire bolt carrier group, right? So question 1 is, what are the critical dimensions associated with these components? And from doing research by using the micrometer, I really use the caliber. The buffer dimensions, the head measures 0.95 hundredths of an inch. The body width measures 0.68 hundredths of an inch, and the entire length measures 3.25 inches, right? That's for 1. Flash hider dimensions are 0.82 hundredths of an inch. The outer dimensions are 0.58 hundredths of an inch, and the internal dimensions in length will be 1.75 inches, right? Internally, right? So the bolt carrier group has outer dimensions that measure in diameter of 0.94 hundredths of an inch. The inner dimensions measure in 0.61 hundredths of an inch. And with this bolt head fully extended, it measures 7.27 inches, completely fully extended, right? Second question was, what potential malfunctions may occur in those improper modifications made to these components, right? If they were to make improper modifications, right? And I can explain some of the specifics behind these, right? So for the buffer, honestly, if this starts to malfunction, it's likely that the rifle will have a failure to feed or to eject, right? This needs to be used inside of a spring in the buffer tube to work with the bolt carrier group hitting it. So that's pretty difficult, right? For the flash hider, the flash hider's damaged. I don't fully think there will be, and it will affect like the functionality of the firearm, but who knows, right? But for sure, it will make it harder to control the recoil, right? And concealment, because this hides the flash, right? That's why it's a flash hider. And it helps with recoil by weighing the muzzle down. Now, with the bolt carrier group, right? Failure to fire can occur if the firing pin is damaged. The internal firing pin in there, as you can see down there, if that's damaged, then the cartridge cannot be fired. If this is the case, then a new firing pin will be necessity to fire that rifle, right? So, question 3. What damage is likely, if any, on these components, and why, right? For the buffer can get worn over time. It's going to take a beating from the bolt carrier group being pushed back from the gases, right? It's always important, in my opinion, to keep extra parts like a buffer tube, a buffer spring, and extra buffers, right? Sometimes, depending on what you need it for, you may need to modify it, like make it heavier for suppression or not, whatever the case may be, right? A buffer being worn will affect the functionality of a firearm. Boom, because it works with the bolt carrier group, right? The flash hider, when it comes to the flash hider, I can only assume wear on the product and its functionality being worn over time of shooting the fire and taking those gases over time out of a rifle. Other than like training bumps from like falls and like bumps and stuff like that, like I don't see marks happening to it, but like damage wise, like you really gotta bang this up. It's really hard metal, really hard steel, right? Other than that, like I don't see much damage except for like the internal like warping over time and thousands of rounds going through it, right? So for the bulk carrier group, the most common damage that I'm aware of is that the firing pin can break, right? It doesn't have to be worn. It doesn't have to be old. Sometimes specs just mess up and things like that break. So although they are made out of tough material, practicing on your firearm consistently is going to require replacing it at some point in time in the future. It could be 10,000 rounds, it could be 15, it could be 8. You never know, right? So it's going to be thousands of rounds before that happens, but the firing pin can break naturally just because of spec. It's out of spec, right? So again, having extra parts in handy, including a full bulk carrier group, bolt head, firing pin, gas tube connection, like all of these parts, you should have extras of, pins, all that good stuff. Because after some years, they get worn, you know? It doesn't have to be years. It can be thousands of rounds. It depends which comes first, right? So question number 4, right, is what training should a gunsmith undergo to avoid damaging these components? Let's be realistic. It's a machine. If you like to shoot, you're going to wear it down, right? The only training that can come to mind, consistency of cleaning parts. After a certain amount of rounds, at least, you know, shoot your AR 800 rounds through, maybe time to give it a nice wipe through and clean and oil up, right? Like you might oil it every few hundred rounds, right? Besides reading, watching educational videos, on how like to avoid causing damage to these things. But let's be realistic. They're all man-made machines that build these things and help construct them. So you just have to understand maintenance is the key to the longevity of the firearm and its key parts of functionality. That's the honest truth. Maintenance is the key, right? You take care of it, it might last longer, but it doesn't mean that it will not break, right? You'll extend the life of these parts. That's fair, but always get backups. Especially, it doesn't matter. If you have a rifle, have a backup for each rifle. So question 5, what components interact with those that I selected and what are their critical dimensions? So for the buffer, the spring interacts with the buffer tube, the bolt carrier group, as well. So the bolt carrier group and the buffer tube are pretty much what interact like with the spring, the buffer tube, and they need each other to kind of like function, right? The buffer tube dimensions, when I measured it with the calipers, the outside diameter was 1.16 of an inch, right? The interior diameter was 1.01, and the entire length was 7.50 inches. The flash hider simply threads onto the end of the barrel. I did not bring the barrel down with me or the upper, so it simply like helps with suppression of the flash and recoil management on a like long rifle or any type of rifle pretty much. So it also helps like pretty much minimize the recoil during the firing part of the rifle, and it expels gaswards upward to like help it push down a little bit. That's kind of how the birdcage dots work, right? So the barrel dimensions that I did measure upstairs were 0.74 of an inch. And then we go on to the bolt carrier group. The chamber of the barrel interact with the face and the head of the bolt carrier group, right? Dimensions for those are, for the bolt face, I don't think I measured it. I'm not sure if I measured it. The chamber, I definitely measured, and it was 0.76 of an inch, right? I used references on YouTube like KB32 Tactical, very good channel. He broke this thing apart and actually took dimensions internally of all this, of the entire bolt carrier group. So that was actually very helpful, KB32 Tactical on YouTube. Again, thanks so much for watching, guys. We appreciate you guys checking out the channel. See you guys soon. Take care.